Through relentless dust storms, soil erosion, and widespread agricultural collapse, the Dust Bowl of the 1930s brought about a catastrophic environmental and economic crisis that uprooted communities and shattered lives in the Great Plains region. The Dust Bowl, a catastrophic environmental and economic crisis that unfolded during the 1930s, stands as one of the darkest chapters in American history. Spanning the Great Plains region, encompassing states such as Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas, this devastating phenomenon was characterized by relentless dust storms, soil erosion, and widespread agricultural collapse. The convergence of severe drought, poor land management practices, and economic turmoil created a perfect storm, leaving behind a trail of destruction that uprooted communities and shattered lives. The consequences of the Dust Bowl were nothing short of catastrophic for the people living in the affected regions. Dust storms of colossal proportions, referred to as black blizzards, became a hauntingly common occurrence. These massive walls of dust, reaching heights of over 10,000 feet, swallowed entire landscapes, transforming day into an eerie twilight and suffocating everything in their path. The relentless assault of fine particles infiltrated homes, barns, and lungs, causing respiratory illnesses and a host of other health problems. Families found themselves trapped in a relentless cycle of poverty and despair as their livelihoods were decimated by the destruction of farmland and the inability to grow crops. The lives of those caught in the clutches of the Dust Bowl were filled with unimaginable hardship and struggle. Families watched helplessly as their once fertile lands turned into barren, cracked wastelands. Unable to sustain their farms, many were forced to abandon their homes and embark on treacherous journeys in search of new opportunities elsewhere. Packed into dilapidated cars, trucks, and even makeshift trailers, these migrants faced grueling conditions on the road. The journey was fraught with uncertainty, with no guarantees of finding work or a better life at their destinations. The physical and emotional toll on individuals and families was immeasurable as they grappled with loss, displacement, and the constant fear of an uncertain future. The economic and social impact of the Dust Bowl was profound, exacerbating the already dire conditions of the Great Depression. The collapse of agriculture sent shockwaves through local economies, leading to widespread unemployment and poverty. Towns and communities that relied heavily on farming withered away, their main sources of income evaporating amidst the choking dust storms. Banks foreclosed on countless farms, leaving families destitute and homeless. The mass migration that ensued, as people sought refuge and new opportunities elsewhere, strained resources in receiving areas, further compounding the challenges faced by both the migrants and their new communities. The Dust Bowl was a devastating environmental disaster that unfolded during the 1930s. It was caused by a combination of factors that led to one of the most severe and prolonged droughts in American history. The primary factor was a prolonged period of below-average rainfall, which turned the once fertile Great Plains region into a dry and arid landscape. This drought, exacerbated by strong winds and high temperatures, created the perfect conditions for the massive dust storms that would come to define the Dust Bowl. Poor farming practices also played a significant role in the emergence and severity of the Dust Bowl. In the years leading up to the 1930s, farmers in the Great Plains had taken advantage of the region's seemingly endless supply of fertile soil, plowing vast expanses of land without implementing proper soil conservation methods. The removal of natural prairie grasses, combined with the lack of crop rotation and excessive use of machinery, left the soil exposed and vulnerable to erosion. Economic conditions further contributed to the Dust Bowl crisis. The 1920s had been a period of rapid expansion and prosperity in the United States, fueled by an agricultural boom and easy credit. However, the stock market crash of 1929 and the subsequent Great Depression brought about a sharp decline in commodity prices and widespread economic hardship. As farmers struggled to make ends meet and repay their debts, they intensified their efforts to produce more crops, further depleting the already fragile land. The Dust Bowl primarily impacted the Great Plains region, which included states such as Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, Colorado, and New Mexico. These states were known for their vast wheat fields and agricultural productivity, which made them particularly susceptible to the devastating effects of the drought and dust storms. The combination of these factors resulted in the Great Plains becoming the epicenter of the Dust Bowl, with communities and individuals in these states facing the harshest consequences of the environmental and economic crisis. The Dust Bowl era was characterized by the relentless onslaught of dust storms that ravaged the Great Plains region during the 1930s. These dust storms, often referred to as black blizzards, were of colossal proportions, reaching heights of over 10,000 feet and stretching for hundreds of miles. They became a hauntingly common occurrence, transforming day into an eerie twilight and leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. The severity and frequency of these dust storms were staggering, with some estimates suggesting that there were nearly 300 dust storms recorded in a single year. The constant barrage of dust filled the air, infiltrating homes, barns, and lungs, causing widespread respiratory illnesses and posing a significant threat to public health. The scale of environmental destruction during the Dust Bowl was staggering. The loss of topsoil, the fertile upper layer of Earth's surface, was one of the most devastating consequences. It is estimated that approximately 100 million acres of topsoil were lost during the Dust Bowl period. This extensive erosion not only led to the degradation of once fertile farmland, but also resulted in irreversible changes to the landscape. The topsoil, rich in essential nutrients, was carried away by the relentless winds, leaving behind barren, cracked wastelands that were incapable of supporting agricultural activities. The environmental impact of the Dust Bowl extended beyond agriculture and had severe consequences for wildlife and natural resources. The loss of habitat and disruption of ecosystems caused a significant decline in wildlife populations. Many species that relied on the Great Plains for food and shelter were displaced or perished as their habitats were destroyed. Additionally, the dust storms had a profound impact on natural resources. The fine particles carried by the wind settled on rivers, streams, and lakes, leading to extensive sedimentation. This not only affected water quality, but also disrupted aquatic ecosystems, leading to declines in fish populations and other aquatic life. The destruction of the land and the environmental devastation had long-lasting effects on agriculture in the affected areas. The loss of topsoil meant that the once productive lands of the Great Plains became unsuitable for farming, leading to widespread agricultural collapse. Crops failed to grow, and farmers faced immense challenges in sustaining their livelihoods. The loss of agricultural productivity had a ripple effect on the economy, exacerbating the already dire conditions of the Great Depression. The environmental destruction caused by the Dust Bowl served as a wake-up call, prompting significant changes in land management practices and the implementation of soil conservation measures to prevent similar disasters in the future. The Dust Bowl was an environmental catastrophe of unparalleled proportions, plunged thousands of families into a vortex of despair and suffering during the 1930s. Among them was the McCarty family, whose personal hardships and enduring struggles epitomized the horrors unleashed by this calamity. Constant exposure to the unrelenting dust storms exacted a heavy toll on their physical and mental well-being, while the loss of their home and livelihood plunged them into an abyss of despair. Living in the Oklahoma Panhandle, the McCartys initially thrived as farmers, tilling the fertile soil and reaping bountiful harvests. However, the onset of the Dust Bowl brought an abrupt end to their prosperous days. Relentless drought and sweeping dust storms rendered their land barren, transforming their once thriving farm into a desolate wasteland. The family's cherished dreams were shattered as their crops failed year after year, pushing them to the brink of destitution. The constant exposure to the choking dust and sand took a devastating toll on the McCartys' physical and mental health. The fine particles permeated their homes, infiltrating every corner and settling on their skin, clothes, and even in their lungs. Respiratory ailments became a daily torment, with family members plagued by persistent coughs, wheezing, and the dreaded dust pneumonia. The heavy burden of physical suffering was compounded by the psychological anguish of living in a perpetual state of uncertainty and fear.